Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Daily Dose of Dat. I hope you're all doing well, and let's dive right in. Today we're covering the high-end EF4 tornado that struck the Diaz, Arkansas area on March 14th, 2025. This powerful tornado tracked roughly 18 miles through Independence and Jackson counties. Uh, let's go to the survey. So this was surveyed by the National Weather Service in Little Rock. Okay. So it first touchdown along Departee Creek Road very late at night on March 14th. And then continuing northeast, it produced mainly EF0 to EF1 damage. There was some intermittent EF2 damage to power poles that were snapped, but it mainly was weak in this area. But as it continued northeast, it impacted the small community of Max, Arkansas, and struck the Jones farmstead. This is where the tornado first reached EF4 intensity. Both homes on the property were completely destroyed, and they earned high-end EF3 ratings. However, a small, well-constructed office/outbuilding was swept clean from its foundation. Let me pull up photos here. So this is a before image of this office/outbuilding, and you can see the homes right here. And this is at the Jones farm. So yeah, this is the office/outbuilding. And here are photos of the foundation that it was swept from. So you can see the presence of anchor bolts seem to be properly installed. They were bent over even from the stress of the sill plate being ripped off. And yep. And then this is one of the homes on the farmstead. This was rated high-end EF3. There isn't a great connection to the foundation, as you can see. This was post cleanup, but it was still completely destroyed. And also note the pretty gnarly tree damage in the background. This was rated EF3, potentially in the EF4 category. It was rated EF3, but it's possible violent winds impacted this, but it's hard to tell due to it being possibly from debris impacts at the Jones farmstead. This was another home swept off its foundation. This was also noted to be post cleanup, but the homeowner said the entire home was still completely destroyed, but they just removed the debris off the foundation for cleanup purposes. And more photos of the tree damage here. Nice hardwood trees, mud blasted and partially debarked. Again, that might be from debris impacts. It's likely it is, but and some trees at the farmstead were completely just reduced to stubs. That's usually an indicator of violent winds. But it seems like it might have been rotted on the inside, so it's more in the EF3 category just to be safe. And so that's at the Jones farmstead. So there's a lot of structures rated high in EF3. There was a bunch of metal building systems and farm buildings that were swept off their foundations too and were well constructed, but due to the limit of the known DI, they're usually maxed out in the EF3 category. So yeah. As you continue northeast, it passed south of Jacksonport, and it mainly impacted trees here. While the tree damage in this area was officially rated EF3, the National Weather Service noted that it looked like a buzzsaw went through essentially. And that's this image here. It's far away, but you can still see the decimation of trees here. And it's still likely it probably maintained EF4 intensity in this area, but officially rated EF3 just because they couldn't get closer to really tell how the degree of damage to the trees essentially. The path here goes south of Jacksonport. The tornado did impact very far southern Jacksonport in this area. I don't remember if it was this one specifically. There's no DI for it here, but in the southern side of Jacksonport, a large manufactured home was completely obliterated, but it was constructed on a slab foundation, which is interesting. But it had the straps typical of a mobile home embedded in the foundation. I noticed that was very interesting construction. You don't see that often. There's no rating for it here, but it would probably be high EF2 to low EF3 for the rating. Or maybe even mid EF3 just to stay aligned with the tree damage found in this area. As the tornado continued northeast, it approached the town of Diaz, and this is where it reached peak intensity. Along West Main Street here, large, well-built homes swept completely off its foundation with very debris left behind. The construction was very good. Anchor bolts were properly installed and well placed, though there was some rotting of the sill plates from termites. That factor itself likely kept the wind speed estimate just below the EXP threshold for very high-end EF4, so 200 miles per hour, and they lowered it 10 miles per hour due to the rotting probably, and that lowered it to 190 miles per hour, which is still high-end EF4. Um, this is a look at the house here from Street View. Not much to see here. There wasn't any photos on realtor websites I couldn't look at, unfortunately. But we have some ground photos that the National Weather Service provide on the Damage Assessment Toolkit here. This is just the overall view of the home. This is post cleanup, it seems like, just based on the tracks of bulldozer, I assume. But yeah, brick veneer home, concrete slab foundation. No, excuse me, CMU foundation, but it's a poured concrete inside, I believe. And yeah, so these were 3/4 inch bolts, I believe. My good friend Addie, who's also a huge weather nerd slash forensic engineer nerd like me, provide some details they noted from the home as like the days following tornado. They jotted some things down here. So this home seemed to have three quarter inch anchor bolts spacing in areas between 4 to 8 feet. 4 feet spacing itself is upper bound classification, but there were areas where it was between 8 feet roughly, and that kind of mixture. So 8 feet is like lower bound, and then 4 feet is upper bound. So they probably kind of went in the middle just based on those classifications. And then there was one wall along the western part of the garage where there were bolts missing, and that was an 8 feet span there. But yeah, the rest of the bolts proper washers and nuts fastened properly. Small amounts of rust. The home was constructed in the post 2000, I believe. And yeah, no hurricane clips, built to code, but not up to hurricane code. But yeah, the termite infested sill plates was the real kicker here for why they didn't go higher. I know there was a lot of discourse following tornado of, the EF5 drought and whatnot. I personally believe this is perfectly rated. The termite damage to the sill plates is a big issue, and I think lowering it down just 10 miles per hour from the EXP threshold was the perfect call. And yeah, if you want to check out Addie's Twitter, you can see it here. They don't post too often, but when they do, they're usually very good content and a lot of interesting stuff she does. Let's see here. So passing this home, actually, excuse me, no. Let's look at contextual damage at this residence. There's an aerial view of the home itself, mostly swept off its foundation, very little debris remaining. Trees were decimated, uprooted. One was even thrown. Thrown trees, usually of like regular size, I guess, is indicative of low-end EF3 winds, I believe. That's just per the revised EF scale. That might change in the future. It's a preliminary estimate, but they didn't apply that to this survey. That's just an estimate from the new tree damage indicators being implemented in the future. Uh, More tree stubbing and denuding. Likely from debris impacts, though, as you see, there's metal wrapped around these. There's also vehicle damage. So the vehicle damage here was pretty gnarly. Large truck thrown. Regular vehicles at this location were thrown and partially mangled. And the probably most interesting part, aside from the home, was the homeowner had a kit plane here. These are relatively, quote, small and not like as sturdy as a regular plane, but it took them days to find the remains of this, and this is the result they found. There's nothing left of it really besides the main part of the frames, I guess, and then some wheels, but that's all that remained of it. This was takes probably at least EF3 wins if I had to guess to do this. Probably EF4. There was no DI applied for this. I don't think they even knew at the time this occurred. But yeah. So following this farmstead, it continued northeast, causing further EF2 to EF3 damage to homes and other structures. And then the tornado passed through the Campbell Station area. And this is in this area, it downed a cell tower, which was rated low end EF3 here, with wind speeds up to 140 miles per hour. And then no photos of damage were provided here, unfortunately. It then crossed Arkansas Highway 347, I believe, or 67. I'm not sure. It says 67 here, but I believe it was 367 on Google Maps. I'm not sure. And then it traveled a few more miles after crossing it, and then eventually lifted. A few weeks after the tornado occurred, I geolocated this footage of it, and that was taken at a farmstead somewhere in this area, I believe, like here. And there was a big power flash in the video, which might have been from a transmission tower in this area. I'm not 100% sure. One of my other good friends, Jump WX on Twitter, noted it might have been a tank or some sort, because he also geolocated other footage and they seemed to better line up. So I might have been hitting this area actually. I'm not 100% sure, but that's just something of note. And then, yeah, so then lifted northeast of, actually lifted east southeast of Tuckerman, Arkansas. And that's the damage for this. Big thanks to National Weather Service in Little Rock for their detailed work on this, and then the many other surveys they had to conduct in this area. They've been hit hard this year, unfortunately. Lake City, Franklin, Arkansas, Cave City. Oh, excuse me, no, Lake City is Memphis. Okay. But still, they've had so much to do this year, and I appreciate their work. But that's it for the damage survey. I guess we can go to a little radar analysis of this event. I overlaid the path onto GR2 analysts so we can go over at the times the tornado reached peak intensity and whatnot. So touchdown around 0417Z, which is 11:17 p.m. Central, I believe. And then continuing northeast, this red dot here is where the tornado reached EF4 intensity for the first time. That's at the Jones farmstead where that well-constructed office building of some sort was swept away and the other homes were destroyed. So right here is where it reached EF4 intensity for the first time. And you will notice as we go with this, the couplet is not particularly violent. This was because it was a very narrow drill bit-esque tornado. So the couplet is very shallow and the TDS is very constricted and deep as well. So just like those two factors combined, you can tell this was probably a really strong tornado, and in result it was. And then at this point, this is when it was doing that quote buzzsaw damage near Jacksonport to the trees, and this is when it also hit Jacksonport and destroyed that manufactured home I discussed. And then here north of Diaz is right here is where the well-constructed home was obliterated. So it was around this point on radar where the tornado reached peak intensity of high in EF4. Again, you will note it's not a very strong couplet here, but a very deep TDS and shallow couplet, yeah. And then it impacted the Campbell Station area where it did the cell tower damage, and then it eventually continued northeast and lifted near Tuckerman. But yeah, I don't believe the supercell went on to do much else. I know there's an EF2 near Paragold, I believe. I don't know if that was caused by the same supercell. I don't remember specifically, but yeah. If you guys have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please reply down below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.